Well, welcome to the Weight Watchers show again, and this is the podcast where you can find out everything you need to know about late and slow payment to small businesses. We are lucky to have again with us Emma Jones, the Small Business Commissioner, and I'm Terry Corby from Good Business Pays. Welcome back, Emma. Lovely to see you again.
Thank you so much, Terry. It feels like a long time, but maybe that's because we've both been getting stuff done that feels like a long time since we spoke, but lovely to be here.
Yes, you are a regular visitor on this show, but a regular visitor everywhere. I must say, I've been very, very impressed personally by just the amount of energy that you have brought to this role, and I thank you for that. That's been wonderful to see how much change you've been able to drive in just a year. It's been amazing, really.
Thank you, Terry. Yeah, it's we've had a good time with it, but we're kind of, and you know this, we're very much on a mission, and I can't do it without this great team. So the team are very motivated to act at the moment. And our mission statement continues to be kind of what we set when I kind of first started, which is how do we make life easier for small businesses because they're having a tough time. So how do we make their life easier through getting money moving quicker? So yeah, thank you for your comments on that.
And a year in, how do you think the role of the Small Business Commissioner is different with looking in the rear view mirror than a year ago when you started?
Some things are not different. So, as I say, kind of, I came in and my job was to do a couple of things. And Terry, as you know, I've got a 2-year role, so it's a 2-year term, and that's partly why I'm out and about a lot because I'm in a hurry to get stuff done with the kind of time limited period. So when I first came in, I kind of said, right, team, everyone knows that payment has been a problem statement for a number of years. It is a key contributor to making life easier for small businesses. So let's do that by continued quality delivery of what I call our business as usual activity, which I'll mention in a moment. And so kind of my job was to give the team a sense of direction to do that, whilst also raising profile of the office. And again, Terry, kind of back to your point around I've been up and down the UK. I've been accepting every speaking invitation that's come in, essentially to kind of let people know this is what the office exists to do and here's how we can help you. So I guess kind of looking back over the past 12 months, and I did a post on this recently because it was late June when I joined in 2025. On business as usual, the team have absolutely excelled. And I should say, because I talk about them quite often, my small and mighty team. Currently, we're at 15 people, but we'll maybe talk in a minute about resources because we're about to scale up ahead of new powers. So my small and mighty team have delivered on the key things that we're meant to do. So number one being casework, so retrieving money that hasn't been paid by businesses. And I was so delighted that in kind of the last financial year, so 25-26, the team recovered over 1.5 million on behalf of small firms, which was more than the previous 3 years combined. The other figure, which Terry, you will have heard me say a few times before, is that 1.5 million is more than our annual cost to the taxpayer. And it's one thing that I've kind of said to our casework team is that if our budget goes up in accordance with kind of scaling up resource to deliver on new powers, can we try, and I need to be careful in saying this because I don't want to set a rod for the back of a future small business commissioner, but can we try every year to exceed the budget that we cost by bringing in more on behalf of small firms? So the casework team delivered on that. The Fair Payment Code, of course, has continued to expand, and we've been delighted to welcome some really big household name brands onto the code, which has been great. And then the other thing that the team have been working on throughout the past 12 months is content marketing and ongoing stakeholder engagement. So we've kind of had this track of just constant delivery of quality stuff that we're meant to be doing. And then, Terry, as you know, alongside that, the consultation and now the bill going through Parliament. So it's been a super active 12 months. The team have exceeded their metrics. I'd like to think the department are happy with the place that we're in. But of course, none of us are resting on our laurels, and we know we've got a lot more to do in the next 12 months.
Very good. And of course, today I join you on an interesting day because it's the day after the commercial payments bill had its, I think, its first committee reading in the House of Lords. This is new to a lot of us, of course, this journey to become an act, a new law. And so I think it was about 7 hours in the House of Lords yesterday. I watched some of it on the parliamentary channel, which was very interesting. But what are your reflections around what happened yesterday? And what does it actually mean for the progress of the bill as it went through yesterday? What does it mean, and what does it mean next?
Great question. And Terry, I know you know this, but every Friday I write a LinkedIn newsletter. The absolute topic of this Friday will be exactly this question, because I am really keen that businesses large and small follow the journey of this bill through Parliament. And what I'm sharing on Friday is this is new to me. I've only worked in government in a full-time role for 12 months. I have never brought a bill through to law. So it is fascinating to watch the journey, which I'll just kind of briefly share. And I know you've got very seasoned listeners who kind of know about this agenda. But very briefly, it all started with the consultation from July to October of last year. In March of this year, government responded to the consultation and said we have an intent to go forward with the 9 measures on which we were consulting. We then were delighted in May that the bill, so it's, as you say, called the Commercial Payments Bill, the bill got included in the King's Speech. So that got us off to a really good start. We then had Lord Leon was appointed to lead the bill through Parliament. And then it went through a process, which I'm going to outline on Friday, where it's introduced to the House. And then it goes through its first reading, which is where the debate starts. And what happened yesterday, Terry, as you say, was the first committee stage. So between May and yesterday, what we have had is the bill gets introduced, and then, of course, the members of the House of Lords can table amendments. So they can look at it and say, oh, well, actually, have you thought about this? Or I'm not quite sure if that's right. So since in this period, we've had 104 amendments come in from members of the House of Lords. So the team, which is made up of my chief of staff, Carlo, plus policy officials in the department and lots of lawyers, the team have been working at pace on responding to all of these amendments that took us to yesterday. So yesterday was essentially where the Lords stand up and say, here are my amendments, and our Lord, Lord Leon, responds with the view from government on those amendments. And I guess in general, what I would say, and again, Terry, I know you're aware of this, but the bill continues to proceed through Parliament. So we now go into what's called report stage. So everything that was said yesterday now gets drafted up into a next version of the bill. We ready that hopefully for the return post-summer, where it goes through the Commons. And then if it all goes according to plan, we would look to get what's called royal assent, which we're hoping to get at the end of this year, stroke early next year. And then essentially the bill becomes an act at that stage. And just back to this kind of general statements that I want to make. First is, a lot of people are saying to me, this is really good progress from a timeline perspective. It's and I think we've been really helped by that, by the fact we had a Secretary of State, Peter Kyle. We've got a new Secretary of State now who wanted this to go quickly through the Houses because everyone can see it's the right and good thing to be doing. So it's moving at pace, which, as you can imagine, I'm delighted about. But also, we've been really pleased that during the consultation period and since the bill has been going forward, we've had good support from it from businesses large and small. And of course, it can sometimes be unusual to get that, because what is good for small may not be good for large. But we have tended to have consensus from large and small businesses that this is a good thing to do. And we've also had cross-party political support, which has helped our progress. So things are moving at pace, which is great. And looking ahead to the future, I guess if you could say what could stop that from happening is political forces. And of course, we've had an interesting week in politics. But of course, I'm delighted to say that our new Secretary of State, which is Johnny Reynolds, who's come back to the department, on the night that he was appointed, I went onto his LinkedIn profile, and his second to last post that he posted on LinkedIn was saying that one of the best things that came from the King's Speech was the Commercial Payments Bill. So he's a supporter. So I would like to think that despite this kind of reshuffle that's happened politically, what it won't affect is the progress of the bill. So good progress so far, and we're really delighted with that cross-party political support and also from businesses large and small.
Right, so that's really good. And I was going to ask actually, I visualized this journey of the bill on a snakes and ladders board. And so, would you think of yesterday as it's moving from number three to number four, or was it a ladder, or was it a snake? And and where do you see the opportunities both for ladders and snakes as you go forward?
So it's interesting that you see it as a snakes and ladders image, because we actually have developed an image of the passage of the bill, which I will be posting with my post on Friday. Well, I don't know if you'll be. Ours has got no snakes in it at all. It is a continuous journey without any blockage. So yesterday was a great move forward, and as I say, the team have been working so hard on reviewing the amendments that came in. And I think what yesterday showed is all the preparation work that the lawyers, the DBT, and Lord Leon have done has worked well for us in terms of they've been able to address all those amendments. So, yes, if I was asked, was it a snake or a ladder? I'd say definitively it was a ladder yesterday.
Terrific, terrific. Now, of course, I did watch a fair bit of it yesterday, and the Office of the Small Business Commissioner, came up quite a few times, which is good. That's
Yeah.
really excellent. And one of the things that that is going to come along is the Office of the Commissioner is going to move from a sort of mediation body much more into a regulator type of body. That didn't seem, no one seemed to object to that yesterday. And I just wondered if, as it progresses, are you going to get the support, both financially and people, to be able to take on that new and important role?
Well, Terry, it won't surprise you. This is a question I've been getting a lot over the past couple of months. And as you say, the powers of the office form about 50% of the bill at the moment. So this is why it's getting a lot of airtime, is because it makes up for a big constituent of the bill. So yes, I am delighted to say our relationship with our sponsoring department, formerly known as Department for Business and Trade, it's now the Department for Business, Science, Innovation and Trade as of this week. But we have a great relationship with that department. So we have had a budget sign off for this financial year for us to start expanding our team to essentially ready the organisation for when the powers come into effect. What we are now doing, and again with kind of new ministers and officials coming in, what we're now working on is 27-28 financial year. And as you can imagine, what we're looking towards is just a scaling of resource as the powers come in. So we want preparation time, which will take us through, because what I didn't mention in that journey of the bill is when the bill receives royal assent and becomes an act, what we then go into is what's called secondary legislation, which is essentially where lots of the detail gets worked through. So the act itself is probably not going to come into effect until later next year, 2027. So as an office, we have modelled extensively what position we need to be in the lead up, where we need to be when the act comes into effect, and I guess the quick wins we want to deliver in those first 12 months. So yeah, I'm delighted to say we're working collaboratively with the department on that, and we'll have the resource that we need.
That's good. I mean, one of the other things that I was reading about that is going to come along is your ability to be able to act on anonymous complaints that will supposedly shield suppliers from retaliation from big suppliers. Of course, in reality, a large company could see who a complainant was because they'd need to see the invoice to be able to figure out what the problem is. Do you think that in the detail of having that anonymous ability there is actually taking away the fear or just moving it?
So I think this is, in my mind, this is the central conundrum around how we make this work going forward. And again, Terry, you will well know that since this office was created in 2018, one of the big issues has been small business reluctance to report their large clients who are not paying on time. And having been a small business owner myself, I understand this, that you don't want to damage the relationship with your large client. And this has been on my mind a lot in terms of how do we move the UK from that kind of self-reporting into the office doing more proactive work, where we take that onus away from the small business and we just identify and then publicly penalise repeat offenders. And actually, we're quite guided on this because I don't think it will be immediate, but we're very aware of it. And I think the Act will be a first big move and we'll move to it culturally over time. But in all of this, we're looking at good practice. And you were there, Terry, but recently a report was launched looking at international countries and how they deliver prompt payment. And one that's coming out is particularly interesting is Japan, where Japan almost comes to this from the perspective of how can we completely remove the onus from small businesses to report, and how can we, in Japan's case, the Fair Trade Commission, how can they just identify the big businesses who are not paying on time? And as I say, we won't get there immediately. Our casework team will still rely on small businesses coming forward to report cases where we do have to identify the small business when we go to the large company to say, this is the invoice that needs paying, thereby identifying the small business. But what we will be doing as an office is interrogating the reporting data that businesses upload, that Terry, as you know, the public duty to report. We will be interrogating that data and proactively reaching out to businesses where we can see late payment times, interest owing, interest being paid or not paid. And that is where our new investigation powers come in. So we will be able to take, when the Act comes into effect, a much more proactive stance to reduce our reliance on that self-referral and for us to proactively reach out to those who are repeat offenders.
Good. Now, one area that at Good Business Pays I've been interested in for about 3 years now is public sector payment practices. If you go to our site, you can see every local authority's payment practice there, and every NHS trust actually. So we've been measuring that for about 3 years, and obviously, it's great for the government to be telling companies how to behave. But in the Procurement Act, it says that, you should pay in 30 days. We know, you're talking about interest paid and interest owed. We know that a lot of public sector procurement folk are not good payers. They are holding on to quite a lot of money for interest owed, which they're not then paying. How do we hold those folks to account when they're telling everyone else how to behave?
Well, I don't like this response, Terry. I really don't like this response. But as you know, this is out of our remit. So late payment in the public sector is not in the remit of the office. The Act is not going to change that. So we're not bringing public sector payments into our remit. But I guess a couple of things to say on that. When we do get cases of late payment in the public sector, we know the people in Cabinet Office who do deal with this. So we're in touch with them on a very regular basis. As I say, when cases come into us, that we immediately know what we can do and to whom we can send them. But also to work with our colleagues to say, how do we work together on content that goes out? In our case, we share content with large businesses on how to pay on time. How can that be mirrored in the public sector, where Cabinet Office is producing content for public sector payers to say, right, here's how you can speed up your money flows. So I guess point number one, we are working across government to try and make sure that those payment targets are met. But where we can come into remit is if a local authority is paying a tier one contractor who's a private sector company, and if they're not paying down the supply chain, that's where the office can step in. Because, and again, Terry, you know this, but just for your listeners, our casework team can work on cases for on behalf of small businesses, with our definition of a small business being less than 50 employees. And the case has to be late payment from a large company, where our definition is a large company is more than 50 employees. So if local authority A has given a contract to tier one supplier who've got more than 50 employees and the small business has not been paid by them, that's where we can kind of step in and have more of a role. So I hope that payment in the public sector will continue to improve. And the other thing that the Cabinet Office is working on is spot checks, where they are going around and they're doing spot checks on contracts to make sure that payment essentially is flowing all the way down the supply chain. So we'll continue to play our part, working with Cabinet Office on that. But as I say, we can more proactively get involved where it comes down the chain.
And how does it sit if a small business is not going through a tier one supplier, but is contracted directly by, let's say, a local authority and then has payment problems? Where do they go?
So that's, as I say, sadly, that's not in our remit. But if they come to us, we can send it on to the team in Cabinet Office who do deal with it. The one change I will say that we're making is the Fair Payment Code, which, as you know, is a code that businesses, up until now, businesses come onto where we can show good payment success. And one of the things we're super keen, or one of the reasons we're keen to promote the code, is when companies come on, we then kind of go around their sector saying, if they've come on the code, you should be able to. We're about to extend Fair Payment Code awardees onto semi-public private organisations. So the likes of Transport for London, which is semi-public private, we're about to do a whole campaign to attract those businesses onto the code. So we're starting to work to kind of say, right, let's make sure this good practice, good payment practice is in both the private and, in our case, the semi-public private sector, but hopefully that will also be a good influence on the full public sector.
Good. I'm going to ask you about the 60 days ceiling or floor that's back in the bill again for a moment. So there's a lot of chatter I've noticed online and different places about people worrying about paying 30 days, for example, and the bill says maximum 60 days. Is there any worry in your mind that companies that currently pay in 30 days will say, well, let's just up it to 59?
So we're very aware of this, Terry. And of course, what we would say is the whole intention of this bill is to move the UK to better payment practice. If you're a small business selling to a client and on the back of the bill, and you're on 30 days, and on the back of the bill, the client takes it to 60 days, that's kind of not good practice, is it? So it just goes against the whole intention. And I suppose one thing I would say to that is, would a company say, right, we're going to move from 30 to 60 because this bill has come into effect, when, as I say, that is a detrimental move. So we are very aware of it. And what we are doing is we are working with some data partners. So sort of within our work, of course, we come across and work very closely, as indeed do you, Terry, with the big cloud accounting partners, the banks, the payment providers, and also the kind of data providers such as Dun& Bradstreet, Experian, CreditSafe. We are essentially working with them to say, when the Act comes into effect, can we be watching for any market signals of what happens? And this, so it's being termed 60-day bunching. So this is what's being referred to is, do companies then bunch everyone into a 60 days? So we don't believe it will happen because, as I say, we can't understand why a company would proactively extend their terms if they're already showing they're a good company on 30 days. But we are very alert and we're watching the data sources that when the Act comes into effect, we're watching out for this. And then if we do see it happen, we can take some preventative measures.
And I had a question about the Fair Payment Code, which of course is now well on its way towards getting lots and lots of signatories, which is brilliant. But it is a promise in a sense of good behaviour. It's self-reported, of course. And I was wondering how you close the gap between what a company claims its payment behaviour is and what the independent data actually shows it does, between saying and doing.
Well, but I think this is the great benefit of the Fair Payment Code, is its predecessor was the Prompt Payment Code, which was very much self-reporting. Anyone could sign it and there wasn't much interrogation in terms of the data, which is actually why the Fair Payment Code was then introduced, because there were businesses on the Prompt Payment Code who were not living up to the values of the Prompt Payment Code, but it wasn't being checked. So the reason for the Fair Payment Code is there is now an application process. So our team checks through the data to make sure that it's real. We get client references. So we write out to customers of the company that's applied. We get the references that they are good payers. And then, as you know, Terry, the companies that come onto the code are on it for 2 years. And then we do the checks again. And we're actually coming up to later this year, will be our first round of renewals of businesses who've been on the code for 2 years. The team will recheck all the data. And of course, what we want to see is that we're not having to kick off any businesses from the code, because that would be if their payment data has deteriorated. So yeah, we have a very forensic approach now to the Fair Payment Code, which therefore I think is why businesses want to be on it, because it very much is a mark of good payment success that has been accredited and endorsed by the office itself.
Wonderful. Now, I know we're up against it time-wise, and you've got another something to go to, so I'm going to get to my last question, which is really about, I suppose if I look at the bill and I think about carrots and sticks, of course, there's a lot of sticks in the bill, but that's the point of it, really. That's the scaffolding there. And I just wondered, you're a business person as well as a government person, the mixture of carrots and sticks in this big culture change journey that we're on. What is your view on what you think works well, what doesn't work well, and maybe what's missing as well, if you think there's any carrots or sticks missing on this journey?
Well, it's a great question. And it does take me back to 12 months ago when I interviewed for the role, because this is exactly what I spoke about in the interview, is that the office, since its inception, has pretty much only had carrots at its disposal. So the office has done an amazing job of kind of saying, right, how do we build a culture of prompt payment where paying your suppliers on time is just the right thing to do? And as I say, we've done that through our casework, through the Fair Payment Code, through content, through engagement with lots of stakeholders, thousands of stakeholders. What the bill brings into effect is the stick element of it. So I guess, Terry, and again, not trying to get out of this question, I wonder if it's maybe a little bit too early to say, because even when the stick comes in, I would like to see the office continues to do all the positive cultural change that we're working on, whilst also leveraging its new powers and teeth, as everyone always refers it to kind of say, well, actually, you can investigate and fine if companies are repeat offenders. I think it probably will be a couple of years in from the Act coming into effect where we'll see how much has the Act been a deterrent, and then essentially to get the balance right of the soft power along with the harder power to see ultimately what works well. And just to kind of end on that point, because it's one thing I would love the office to be in a position to say and do, is back to this event where the research was launched on international comparisons. This report was written by very well-established academics at the Enterprise Research Centre. And their conclusion, pretty much when they'd looked at across the G7 nations and other countries, is they said if the UK gets this right in terms of it legislates according to the current bill that's going through Parliament, if it gets the enforcement body and it gets the right resource to the Office of the Small Business Commissioner, the UK literally could be a world leader in prompt payment. And this is what I think other countries are looking to the UK for, is how do you get that right balance of stick from the legislation, carrot from the enforcing body, also continuing to do lots of positive comms. So if we can build a model in the UK that shows if you have these factors at play, you can get to a much better prompt payment culture, I think that's where the UK will be able to say other countries follow our lead, because we've been able to statistically show we've got those hours down for small businesses of chasing debt. We've reduced that figure of 11 billion cost to the UK economy, and probably, the biggest figure that's on all of our minds, of the 38 businesses that go out of business every day, we've hugely reduced that. So if we can say all of that a couple of years post the Act coming into effect, I think we'll be able to say we've got the right balance of carrot and stick delivered.
Well, Emma, thank you very much for that again. Brilliant job, and more power to your elbow. And as you go on this journey of taking everything through, may your game be full of ladders and no snakes, I hope. Thank you, and see you again.
Thank you so much, Terry. Really appreciate it.